there YouTube, this is Big G here from South Africa, and today I'd like to do a video remembering one of the all-time greats, the Spectrum 48K. What a machine. If I have a look at this one that's in front of me here, this is the actual one that I received. I must have been about 11, 12 years old when for a birthday present I received the ZX48K. From then, I've always admired this machine. One of the things that I really enjoyed about the Spectrum was its size. It is really small. I would say that the equivalent size today would be of maybe a Galaxy Pad or iPad would be a similar sort of form factor. And if you think of it, this is a complete computer, barring the screen. Everything is here. You just have to add on your tape deck or micro drive, and away you went. Yes, it was difficult to get the games going. The games are very, very basic, but still, it is a computer. And back then, this machine was high-tech. It may have been very basic compared to some of the others out on the market, like the Commodore 64s and so forth, and not as powerful, but still, it was a complete computer. Looking at the rubber keys, that squishy feel takes me right back to those days, sitting for hours and hours and hours typing in a basic program that did a couple of beeps and bops and moved a couple of pixels around the screen, but still I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Things on it, it worked well. The sound, not as powerful as the SID chip, but still I found it was adequate. The beeps and noises that I managed to get out of it just using basic routines was fine. The game playing was great. Definitely one of my favorites from back then was old Jetpack. I'll do a little bit of a play of it just now, because whenever I get a hankering for a little bit of 8-bit nostalgia, I get this old Spectrum out, boot it up, get this Jetpack going and play it on this. I don't find playing on emulators as much fun as actually getting the old machines out of their boxes and up and going. My kids can often wonder what makes me or what interests me in these old machines, but they don't realize that growing up with the Spectrum 48K came with its own set of unique challenges. It wasn't simply just a matter of switching the machine on and within 5 seconds you were busy playing the latest and greatest game, as my son does. I mean, I remember growing up on the farm, there was no electricity for one thing. So getting home from school, rushing through setting up the Spectrum, and then having to sit and wait until 5 o'clock every day. And when 5 o'clock came along, out I went through to the generator room, kick-started the old Lister power plant, waited for it to get the electricity going so that it wouldn't be surging, and then switching on the Spectrum. But still, it doesn't mean that I could just get into a game and start playing. I had to still load the game up. This took 5-10 minutes if it was successful, and then I was into game playing. But still, I loved this machine. One of the strong points of the Spectrum was definitely its software library. Even though some of the games weren't as advanced or as good as possibly some of the Commodore 64 stuff that was out there, there was such a wide variety that was available. Obviously at school there was a bit of a swap club going on. Each person would go and purchase 1 or 2 games, and I mean, back then games would cost you between 20 to 30 rand for a game. Doesn't sound like much now, but you know, it's equivalent to 300-400 rand today. So games were pricey. And yeah, and then each would go and sit and, even though I don't condone piracy, back then as 11, 12-year-old, you used to sit and tape these games and swap them and then play them. But that came with its own unique challenges. Often your tape-to-tape didn't work. The software piracy that was built into these, some of them were really difficult, and some you just couldn't get around. I mean, I can remember using I think it was called a lens lock. Some games you had to sit and look through. I must actually go through my collection, see if I can find that lens lock. Or the manuals, the code that you had to print, had to input was actually in color. knowing that kids didn't have access to color printers, you'd have to sit and you wouldn't be able to type in the color-coded password in order to play the game. I can remember sitting for hours having to convert a color manual into a number format so that I could still input the game. I think my favorite games back then, the ones that come to mind, the ones that I really enjoyed playing a hang of a lot of, was Jetpack. Definitely one of the first games from Ultimate Play the Game that I really enjoyed. Most of the Ultimate Play the games were good. I didn't really enjoy the Night Laws and some of their later games. The isometric 3D just didn't do it for me. I preferred the more basic arcade games. And then some of the adventures, playing the old Hobbit. Text Adventure was great. Gremlins, Spider-Man, I think there was even a Hulk and a couple of other of those adventure games back then were great fun. Some of the games are really terrible. I mean, some of them almost unplayable. These machines are absolutely legendary. I believe Sir Clive Sinclair created definitely one of the all-time great computers. The later Spectrums, if you have a look at the ZX Plus 2s and the Plus 3s and so forth, still don't have that specky feel to me, that fit in your hand small factor that I loved so much. These are really great machines, and to be able to still get them working, I have about 9 of these. Well, I had 9, I think I've given a few of them away, of these little ZX Spectrums. Most are working. The only issues really is with the membrane keyboards, which you can get replacements for, but otherwise the machines are still working. They still function, and I can still get to load games. Yes, there are some add-on peripherals that I've bought since then, like a IBIS card and so forth, so that I can load games from a SD card to make things easier. Loading games from a tape deck just simply takes too long, even though, surprisingly enough, most of my tapes work. I mean, it just shows that technology from that era hasn't failed yet. I'm hoping that the Spectrum in 30 years from now, if I'm still around, would still be functioning, and that when we look back on these machines, the next generations can understand and appreciate how far we've come in computing. My kids will often scoff at these games when I'm sitting playing them on my own and say, geez, what crap, look at the graphics, look how blocky it is, the sound is absolutely non-existent. But what they fail to understand is the nostalgia that comes with playing these games, is that back then the graphics and the sound was just part of the game. The rest of it was your imagination. What is really encouraging these days is the homebrew scene. There are still guys out there creating games for this. And there's a lot of channels that are dedicated to it, and some really great channels on the Spectrum that I follow, that really bring out some of their old stuff, but also show and display some of the newer games, that there are people out there that are still producing games for these old machines. Why would they do it? I mean, certainly the audience is limited, but it's because of the enjoyment you get out of it. The enjoyment of actually managing to get something out of these machines that you can put up and visually display, and others can actually enjoy. What better way to remember a great machine by playing one of its greatest games? And here it is, Jetpack from Ultimate Play the Game. Definitely an iconic game for the Spectrum. And the amazing thing is it ran on the 16K Spectrum, so it was very, very popular back then. And it is the first game that I can remember actually playing and enjoying on the Spectrum. They got me hooked, together with a couple of other classics like Attic Attack and Wheelie and so forth. So yes, let's boot up the old Spectrum and enjoy. And there we have it. After a couple of minutes of patience, we get into the game, and this is definitely one of the games that symbolizes the Spectrum. Absolutely iconic and a great all-round game. And it still amazes me what the program has managed to do to fit this. I mean, gameplay is great, all running on only 16K. Sound, everything. Okay guys, from me, I hope you enjoyed this video, remembering the old Speccy, enjoying a few minutes of me just remembering what a legend of a machine it was and how much it contributed to computers. I always wondered to myself, if Sir Clive Sinclair had never been involved in computers, what the world would be like, or the computer world would be like, if this little marvel had never been introduced to us. So in conclusion then, long live the Spectrum. I certainly hope it stays around and can still be found and still displayed and still even used for many, many years to come. Thanks guys for listening to me waffling on about the old Spectrum, but this is definitely one of those machines that's really close to my heart, that I've really enjoyed over the years, and it was my first introduction to computing.